Okay, so in the next part of the course, we're going to model out a couple EBITDA schedules into our file. But before we do that, I just want to talk about what EBITDA is and why it even exists in the first place. So, what is it? You probably know this, but in case you don't, EBITDA stands for the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And so, why does it exist? Well, it has a handful of purposes. The primary purpose is actually to compare the normalized profitability of one company to another company. And usually that is a similar company. A secondary purpose of it is it's a rough approximation of operating cash flow. I say rough because it doesn't factor in any kind of working capital at all. It also doesn't factor in capex or any other financing spend, which would be free cash flow. A lot of people get up in arms about the accuracy of EBITDA, and I totally agree. It is not cash, but it is a approximation of the operating cash flow. It's also used as a basis for valuation. So oftentimes a company goes out to market, they're going to calculate their EBITDA, that's going to be multiplied by a market multiple, and that's going to give you the enterprise value. So it serves as a basis for that calculation. And then lastly, it's a core metric in covenant analysis. So EBITDA plays into the numerator and denominator of the fixed charge coverage ratio, as well as the denominator in the leverage ratio. And we're going to talk about that later on in the course. So that's what it is. But why does it exist or why is it built that way? So the first one is the interest. We take the earnings and then we're going to add back the interest because a company could be financed with all equity. And so therefore it wouldn't have any interest expense. And so you want to adjust that interest back out. Then when it comes to depreciation and amortization, there's really two things here. One is there are differences in accounting policies between companies. And so you would add those expenses back to basically normalize or strip out the differences in policies. And then when it comes to the approximation of the operating cash flow, these are non cash expenses. So it's fairly logical to add them back to the earnings or the net income. Then when it comes to taxes, I put this one at the end because this is a little bit more confusing. First off, you've got different jurisdictions for different companies, and so there could be different tax laws in those places. So you want to add back the tax. But the second reason is really all the other adjustments above would affect the taxes, right? Interest affects tax, depreciation and amortization, it affects tax. And so if you're going to strip out the interest and the depreciation and amortization, it also makes sense to strip out the taxes because those would be affected, right? The tax is the net result of all the revenues and expenses of the company. And so that's why you take the taxes back out. All in, what this does, these are adjustments that help us normalize the earnings so that it can be compared to other companies. And so that is the primary purpose here. So now that we have a general understanding of the overview, in the next video, we're going to get back into the model and start building out the EBITDA schedules.